My ministry has been working hard to make sure that the education sector responds effectively to the situation caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. The Ministry of Education and Sports developed the Education and Sports Sector COVID-19 Response Plan, which is focusing on three main objectives. One, to ensure continuity of learning during the closure of education institutions. Two, to prepare the sector for reassumption and the management of schooling once the closure of education institutions is lifted. Three, to build the sector's capacity for resilience and response to emergencies in the post-COVID-19 period. Honorable members, in order to facilitate continuity of learning and ensure that all learners across the country are reached, my ministry developed a continuity of learning framework with three complementary modes. One, delivery of live and recorded radio and television lesson broadcasts by exemplary teachers. B, printing and distribution of home study materials. C, online uploads of recorded lessons and home study materials. The materials were also uploaded on the NCDC website for learners who are able to access them online. Honorable Chair and colleagues, with these few remarks, I would like to call upon the Director of Basic and Secondary Education to give us an update on the measures undertaken by the Ministry of Education and Sports in order to ensure continuity of learning. With your permission, Director. Brother Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable Members of Parliament, through my PS, I'll go straight to the update. Chair, you remember when the schools were closed, like it has been mentioned by my Honorable Minister, we came up with a plan, and one of the key components of the plan was continuity of learning. And Chair, under this, the ministry came up with an arrangement or program to have lessons on TV and radio, which was done for 4 weeks in the month of May 2020, Honorable Chair. At the same time, home study materials were also prepared. However, when the closure continued, Honorable Chair, the ministry again didn't sit back, engaged NCDC, and started on developing another package, because the first package was looking at the remedial, the work that had been covered before term 1. So when the closure continued, NCDC now started preparing another package which would push our learners to another level. And the learning framework and study materials have been successfully developed by NCDC. These materials are going to be bound in one booklet for primary, containing all the 4 subjects. It will be in one set, and then we shall have 2 sets for lower secondary and upper secondary, where you have a package for sciences, then a package for arts. And Honorable Chair, the work that is being prepared covers the entire year, so it will be, it may be used for progression for these learners. Given that learners in P1 to P3 have not yet developed adequate capacity to self-study from printed materials, the printed materials are targeting P4 to P6. And Chair, this comes from the lessons learned from our first phase, because the P1, P3 work was not effectively used. Honorable members, it should be noted that printed home study materials are complementary to the lesson broadcast on radio and TV. Honorable Chair, the program on radio and TV is also going to continue. The procurement of the 9 million radios for all households with the learners is ongoing, and this will ensure that no child is left behind in home schooling. 4 million radios will be imported, while 5 million radios will be assembled locally here on every chair. So in total, we are planning to provide 9 million radios, and like I said, the procurement is ongoing. Radio lesson scripts for pre-primary and P1 to P3 are ready, but translation into local languages is still ongoing at NCDC. And Honorable Chair, again, the members had reservations on this because the first package didn't have this material translated in the local languages, so that put our learners at a disadvantage. This time around, we are putting them in local languages, and also to promote the thematic curriculum which the ministry is implementing. A total of 522 audio and 390 video lessons for both primary and secondary schools have been recorded, and editing work to make them ready for broadcast is nearing completion. Honorable Chair, the adoption of special needs education materials for primary was concurrently done as the materials were being developed. Honorable Chair, if you may be aware that in the first phase we had a challenge with special needs learners, our learners of special needs. This time around we said no, it should happen at the same time, so that by the time the rest of the learners are getting, the special needs learners are also getting their package. Sign language lessons in all core subjects and braille and large print for the visually impaired in primary has been completed. Adoption work on secondary has also started. Honourable members, we are confident that schools will reopen for candidate classes. We shall be ready to roll out the enhanced home study program for effective learning that can lead to promotion to the next class in case the situation does not warrant reopening for all learners. That's our plan. So the key issue here is to make the materials effectively utilized. Update on preparations for reopening of education institutions. Honourable members, on the reopening of education institutions, the Ministry has worked very closely with the Ministry of Health and senior scientists on COVID-19 to make the necessary preparations. The Ministry of Health developed standard operating procedures, the SOPs, to guide the operations of education institutions during COVID-19. Based on the SOPs, the Ministry consulted extensively with the key stakeholders and developed guidelines for phased reopening of education institutions and the strategy for implementation. Honourable Chair, I beg to report that so many stakeholders were consulted: religious leaders, our government partners, teachers, science. In every consultation, we had a team from the science. The Ministry is currently implementing a roadmap of preparatory activities that should be undertaken to ensure readiness of the institutions for reopening. Honourable Chair, I note maybe elaborate on the strategy and the guidelines. We have the strategy in place. We have the guidelines. The reason why we came up with the strategy, the SOPs looked a little stringent, so we said let's come up with a strategy on how to implement these guidelines. Honourable members, I would like to give you a brief overview of our strategy for safe reopening of education institutions for candidate classes and final year students. What does that strategy contain? Reopening of education institutions should be for only candidate classes. That's a key. That's one of the key components of the strategy. And the final year students, while the rest continue with enhanced home learning. With enhanced home learning schooling, it is anticipated that the learners in the rest of the classes can reach a level of learning achievement for promotion to the next class, even if they don't go back to school before end of the year. Wouldn't, of course, that wouldn't be our choice to say they shouldn't go back, but in case the circumstances do not allow, we hope and we are confident that the material, what we are preparing, can make them be able to proceed to the next class. However, progression shall be based on our evaluation of how effectively homeschooling has been implemented. And this is a responsibility which is shared. So everyone should be able to make sure that these materials are effectively used. An assessment will be done after a month to determine how well institutions are implementing the SOPs, to inform a decision on whether learners can be allowed back or not. All schools opening for candidates shall operate either as day or boarding, but not both. This seems a little stringent, but Honorable Chair and members, we are operating in an emergency situation. In a war, to say the least, if I go by His Excellency's words. So when we say either day or boarding and not both, we are forced into that kind of situation. After all, we are dealing with small numbers, candidate classes. It would be a little strange if we are saying this for the entire school. NCDC shall adapt the curriculum to focus on essential skills and the knowledge that must be achieved at each level. Ministry of Education and Sports shall distribute COVID-19 prevention and control messages to education institutions. The ministry will work with education institutions to strengthen psychosocial support mechanisms for both learners and workers in these institutions. And I want to report, Chair, we have a department, guidance and counseling, and as we talk now, it is on ground, has started doing some work, and we hope to scale it up and even seek more support on this aspect of psychosocial, because we know our learners, our teachers may really be greatly affected by this pandemic. So they need to be prepared for them to be ready to go back to school. Schools that do not employ a qualified health worker shall establish a formal collaboration with a health facility within a radius of 5 kilometers for quick response and management of emerging health issues. Honorable Chair, many of our schools, we need to consider on this, do not have these people, the health personnel. A few do have, but majority don't have. And we are in talks with the Ministry of Health to make sure that we map and touch schools to the health facilities which are within the vicinity. And whenever Chair, we had an opportunity to interface with the Honorable Minister of Health, who committed that they will be able to give us surveillance support in case of need. School programs shall be recognized to focus on core subject delivery and to minimize co-curricular activities. Another key strategy, Honorable Chair, is that you know, every time we have extracurricular activity, this time around we are saying, let's do away with extracurricular activities so that we can save time for the academic, which prepare our learners for their final exams. Morning and afternoon shifts or alternate day attendance shall be adopted in day schools with big numbers of candidates. We don't have many which have got very big numbers. We have a few biases, Nkoma, Masakeses, Koloeses here. Those we may be forced to advise so that they have shifts. The Ministry, through capitation grants and the GP grant, shall provide the following basic facilities to government grant-aided schools: washing facilities, temperature guns, spray pumps, and disinfectant liquid for disinfection. Proprietors of private schools shall be required to provide the matching quantities of the facilities before the schools are allowed to reopen. Honorable Chair, we would have wished to support all the schools, but our budget is really very constrained, and we can't be able to even provide for private schools. But the private schools have already indicated, Honorable Chair, they are ready. What they are waiting for is guidance from the Ministry of Education, and they will be able to provide, though there are some few who may really struggle. To ensure readiness for safe-phased reopening of education institutions, the following preparations are being undertaken. 1. Sensitization of district education officers and the managers of education institutions on implementation of the standard operating procedures. Release capitation grant to education institutions to enable schools acquire facilities for implementing the SOX. The facilities I've talked about above here, the temperature guns, and what we hope they will be able to secure these through the capitation grant, and the effort has been made by the accounting officer to request Ministry of Finance to immediately release this capitation grant. Distribution of 2 standard face masks to each learner, candidates and final year students in all education institutions, both private and public. Honorable Chair, arrangements are in high gear to have these masks delivered. Already we have Minister of Health has already committed to provide these masks. Inspection of education institutions for readiness to implement the standard operating procedures. Our desk is set to go, and once they get the facilitation they need, the next day they will be able to hit the road. And I want to report, Honorable Chair, that we did a mini inspection even before the desk managed to reach many of all the schools, save for Namisinga. It went to all the local governments, and it was trying to find out how ready our schools would be or are in case we reopen. So we have a report which is not that bad, because the indication is that schools are ready to receive back the candidate classes. Not for all, but at least candidate classes, they have space, they can be able to have those classes back. Challenges of declaring a dead year. Honorable Chair and members, some people have urged Ministry of Education and Sports to declare a dead year. Doing that would have been the easy way out. However, there are major problems or challenges associated with a dead year, and some of which are here below. Prolonged closure of education institutions and sports facilities will cause deterioration and loss of key education infrastructure and facilities. This is not something we can afford when we are investing so much in improving school infrastructure and facilities. Honorable Chair, I want to share to members here. Members of Parliament made a visit, I think it was in Busia, where they found some furniture, not attended to, and it was almost rotting out. So when we declare the idea, much more infrastructure is going to be lost. Many teachers and other workers in private education institutions have gone for months without a clear source of livelihood. If this continues, it is likely to lead to higher teacher attrition as they try to find alternative employment. And even as we talk now, we are not sure whether we are getting our teachers 100% back. We are likely to lose some teachers. So when we prolong, more teachers will be lost. Honourable members, as you are aware, in government education institutions, employees are being paid without working. While this is important for their livelihood, it is neither logical nor ethical for government to continue paying teachers when they are not working. 4, in terms of completion and transition rates, the prolonged closure of schools would lead to increased dropouts, resulting from teenage marriages, teenage pregnancies, child labor, drug abuse, and among others. Honourable members, each of you is coming from a constituency where this kind of situation is happening. So if we again prolong, we are likely to lose many more. A sizable percentage of our learners may not come back to school. Many are becoming pregnant with the posts we are getting, many are being married off. 5, a dead year, honourable members, would also have implementation challenges for non-candidate classes, especially in primary. parents would put pressure on schools to promote their children to the next class next year. I have my colleagues who had already determined to make sure that their children do not repeat. And some of us have got children at home, especially the girl child. When you look at them, they are put on weight, they are put on what, and this comes with a lot of challenges. So parents may force schools to have their children going to the next class, and that will cause a lot of jam, like His Excellency mentioned the other day. This may result in very congested candidate classes and unmanageable numbers of students registering for national examination next year. Honourable members, with all these and many other challenges, the Ministry of Education has fully supports the government's decision for phased reopening of education institutions for candidate classes and enhanced homeschooling for the rest. What are the financial implications for some of these activities? Honourable members, our Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development has confirmed the availability of funds for the procurement of the 9 million radios. For printing, increased content implies more number of pages for each booklet. Here, these are details of how much it would cost in case you take an alternative, either A or B. Reports from phase 1 show that newspapers print easy tears on the edges of the booklet, and this was a complaint. I attended one of the meetings here, and members of Parliament were complaining that the materials we sent in a week, they were nowhere to be seen because they could easily be torn into pieces. This was partly because of the type of paper we used at that time, and it was justified because we didn't have enough resources to use the right paper. It is cumbersome to read because of the cream color, all these challenges associated with it. The Global Partnership for Education recently approved the sum of $14.7 million toward the sector COVID-19 response, out of which a sum of $5.82 million, approximately 20 billion, will cater for phase 2 printing. This leaves a funding gap of 158 billion, which government will have to find. And honourable members, that grant came with very tight conditions because it is providing for specific classes, and basically the upper primary and lower secondary, leaving the rest of the classes unprovided for. In conclusion, honourable members, Chair and members, as we prepare to reopen education institutions for candidate classes and final year students, I would like us to remember that the responsibility of ensuring our children are safe both at home and at school while effectively learning lies with all of us. This is a shared responsibility. And questions here have been asked. Are they safer in schools or at home? Where are they safer? Because there is no guarantee that even when they remain at home, they will be safe. We think they are safer in school where there is some kind of tight supervision. Many of them, we find them on the pitch, in villages, in companies, or what, in town trading centers. So we don't know. They may be even at risk where they are now. I would like to call upon all of you, honourable members, to support us in sensitizing the public on the government strategy for partial opening of education institutions and enhanced homeschooling programs. Parents need to know that they have a very important role to play in supporting homeschooling of their children, and we are depending on you, honourable members, because you interface with these parents. It's incumbent upon you really to prepare them psychologically and in all aspects to make sure that they go by the government's decision of the candidate class coming back. Finally, honourable members, I call for your support in appropriating the required resources for the education sector to provide effective continuity of learning under these challenging circumstances. Chair, through my PS and Honourable Minister, I submit. Thank you.
Thank you. the submission by this my comments, but I open it up to us to raise any issue that you think should be clarified or were not captured in my presentation. Still a reminder, we are going to make this meeting so that we can be able to lead ourselves to these other things before plenary. Yes, Honorable Musoke.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I want to thank the team for the Ministry of Education for the efforts so far towards the reopening of schools, and then the explanation is given. For record purposes, I'm Robert Musoke, MP Budiope West. Chair, I have 3 comments. The first one is on page 6, the last paragraph, that schools that do not employ a qualified health worker shall establish a formal collaboration with a health facility within a radius of 5 kilometers for quick response and management of emerging health issues. Mr. Chair, when you look around the staffing levels and quality of staff in our health institutions, I mean education institutions, really some institutions improvise. I want to sing out one example of askaris at schools. Almost 70% of these schools, when you find there an askari, he may lack any kind of training, thus skills. In fact, some security officers need security themselves to be covered by other people. Therefore, when we leave it for the management of these schools to source out health workers, you might find that they may pass the vice of employing people who don't really qualify. I would advise that let it be left in the hands of Ministry of Health, so that at a district they are given a list of number of schools with the candidate classes or number of institutions which need these health workers, so that it becomes the responsibility of the Ministry of Health to allocate a health worker to these institutions. Otherwise, somebody will get somebody, an auntie, a sister, and act as a nurse. At the end of the day, we might fall prey. I want to give the last example on that. On the reopening of landing sites, there was a requirement of having a temperature gun at each landing site. At one point in Kanganyanza, in my constituency, these people asked for a temperature gun, and being a political era, I provided one. But you could find that the one who was handed over a temperature gun couldn't even read. His work was just to show, we have it, it is here. Therefore, if really this is passed on to the education institutions, it might ruin the future and the purpose. Mr. Chair, the second issue, I've listened carefully, and there is a lot of attention which is being given to the candidate classes. But there is always a stumbling block, because COVID has really eroded the parents of the finances. Everybody is down financially. I wanted to know from ministry, what is the plan of UNEB? Because these candidate classes might report, and then 2 weeks after they are told to register. UNEB always set a deadline for registration. At least some government institutions, the students or the candidates are catered for by government. By now, the private wing, given that parents have taken loan without working, these people might have a lot of difficulty in paying the UNEB fee, and you find many students or many candidates might miss registering as a result of the date that shall be set. Therefore, I request that we have something, or we hear something about UNEB. What is its target? Is there a deadline? When are they beginning to register? 2, when is this academic year ending? If they are reporting next month, when are they writing there? So that we can really know the elaborate plan of UNEB, because it might come in as a stumbling block. At the end of the day, some of our candidates might miss. Mr. Chair, lastly, we are having Senior 6, Senior 4, Senior 1, I mean P7 reporting. What is going to be the fate of those classes in the next academic year? Because this means that when the Senior 4 reports and they write exams, they are going to be promoted. Those who shall pass, they shall automatically be promoted to Senior 5. Then those in P7 shall automatically be promoted to Senior 1. But already we have students who are in villages, who are in Senior 1, others are in Senior 5. Are we going to have 2 cohorts in the same academic year that is going to harm? Then 2, what shall happen to the Senior 4, Senior 6, and the P7? Are they going to remain virtual classes without students next year? Because I would expect that after these candidates leaving the classes so that they are promoted, there are others who are going to come in and fill the gap. Therefore, those are my 3 concerns, but majorly this one is a bit confusing in the villages. People are saying, are we going to have 2 cohorts of Senior 1, in that we may have these ones who are just going to be promoted, who are going to be promoted, and so it is a bit confusing here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Minister, and your staff. I have 3 concerns, and I want to say 2 of them are closely related to what my colleague has stated. My first concern is on page 6. Actually, 2 are on page 6. The first one, which is related to what my colleague has mentioned, is in paragraph number 1. When you read it and you come, actually the last statement, it is like, however, progressions shall be based on our evaluation of how effectively homeschooling has been implemented. The implication here, I would imagine, kind of answers what he's saying. That if you evaluate that the home learning has been okay, then students and children will be promoted to the next classes. So that would essentially be the answer to him. But my question now is coming. This evaluation that will be done, that evaluation will be for who or for what? Will it be for the schools? Will it be for the students and the children? Because I know that in as part of the strategy, you have asked National Curriculum Development Center to develop a number of materials that you are going to bind, you are going to print, and that should help the home learning. And now the ministry at the end of it is going to do an evaluation of if the home learning has been effective for these children to go to the next class. My question in this, I want to repeat, is this evaluation, will it be for the students, will it be for the schools? Bearing in mind the time frame of the evaluation. Then the second one, which is still related to what you have brought up, is about the relating the health workers in a school or relating schools to health facilities. here I want to give, actually my thinking was to give a suggestion. The possibility of zoning, and in my mind I'm taking like Pakwach district. We know that we have health center 3s, and the health center 3s are in sub-counties, and sub-counties also have secondary schools. So isn't it possible that we could just zone and say, Wadilai Secondary School, you are going to be attached to Wadilai Health Center 3. So even if you don't have a health worker, we know that you can quickly relate with that. But maybe there can be areas where the schools are many, the health facilities probably are scattered. My suggestion would still be that the schools are attached to specific health facilities. So then my last point, the third one, is on page 9, and that is about the financial implications. For the radios, it comes out very clearly that the Ministry of Finance has confirmed that they have the money for the radios. Meanwhile, for the other materials, particularly for the deficit of about 158 billion, you are seeking for appropriation from Parliament. And the question I'm asking is, this one which is confirmed for the radios, doesn't it require any form of appropriation? And for this other that will require appropriation, can it also be confirmed that actually they can avail this money? Because I don't want us to go in a situation where as a committee for us we think it's okay, this money must be given, and yet the Ministry of Finance is telling us we don't have the money. So those were the 3 concerns, Chair.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I'd like to thank the Minister and the presenter for elaborate presentation. I have 2 concerns. One is the President on Sunday announced that the schools, the finalists, are starting on the 20th or 15th of October. Are you ready as a ministry to have these schools started? Do you have all the arrangements in place? Things for washing hands, sanitizers, the distance, the desks. Are you ready for it? Do you have the money? Because if you say that the schools should do it, the schools do not have the money. Have you prepared all these ones ready for us? That's one. Because you may say, yes, we are starting, at the end of the day, you may not do it. For example, if you go to a primary school like Chakule in my area there, they may not even have the jerrycans for washing the hands. So how are you making sure that you have all those ready for the candidate classes? Then number 2, you are talking of examining these people with their home learning which has been taking place. From my own observation, some students are not doing anything. First of all, they never had the radios. The radios are not there. And you are still planning to buy the radios. Even the money is not enough. So how sure are you that every child has benefited from this home learning center? Yeah. And now when do you intend to examine these students, these home learning students, to see that they are promoted to the next class? When is it starting? Because without the proper teaching, you cannot say we are examining people. What will happen if all of them failed? What will you do? So these are the challenges I would like us to see what we can do. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. And I want to thank the Ministry for the presentation, and actually thank the government for deciding to remove it. I think we have had challenges that are really beyond our understanding, and it is good that we start to reopen and see how things move. Now, my issues are actually just within what the colleagues have raised, and I wanted to really appreciate the challenges that you have brought in declaring a dead year. And like colleagues have put it, I was also wondering when we started saying we want to open the candidate classes, knowing of course that we have those other classes also that need to be promoted, so that we also have a candidate class again coming up next financial year. Now I want to start with the evaluation that you are talking about under the last, and this is on the home learning. I want to start from there because that is what has been on. And maybe I start with the question, first of all, that from that time when we started these home learning areas and the strategies that you put in place, around 3 of them, radio program, television, and then the prints, have we as ministry even done any evaluation before we even talk about now continuing to even print and then buy these radios? Because from my observation, even with the children that I have in my house, because where there is a television and these lessons have been on, I have on several occasions asked even my children to sit and listen, but I realized that there is actually no much learning going on. Children need to be supervised, and we have, of course, you know the type of parents that we have. We don't have parents who are keen. There are actually very few, and of course even others don't even mind about that. So I wanted us, first of all, even before we go to thinking about even printing and even the radios, that is this learning actually going on? And I've given you an example of what I have observed. There is actually almost nothing. So, and on the same, there was one time when I was hearing from my constituency that there was a team that were identifying teachers per village, and I had thought that those ones would be the ones to guide, but I have not again seen anything. Can we get maybe an update on that? Because I know if we take that one, then we can talk about the progression on the home learning. Now on the challenges that you put forward, of course when you look at the challenges, much as you are talking about okay, all the challenges of course are challenges that we all admit, but we would also know that as we open the candidate classes, some of the teachers, of course, within even these schools are still going to remain redundant, because we have teachers who teach candidate classes, but the rest of the classes, like primary 1 up to primary 6, will still remain redundant. Because when you are bringing up the challenges that some of these teachers will maybe run away, because of that one will continue. So actually this one will still go with what I was bringing up on the registration of the teachers, that we also need to have them at least to do something so that we can have them be occupied. And then I wanted to find out whether you have already a program on the activities that you are going to carry out, because you have already the program here where you are talking about the activities that are going to be carried forward. Like for example, the education involving the teachers. Is there a program already set? Because as politicians and people who interact with these people would also be valuable to at least give information to our teachers and wherever.
Chairman, that one is not clear. A program, are you talking about a strategy?
No,
program for...
You have the activities that you want to carry out before we open Where is it? You talked about sensitization of education, of district education officers and managers, and then do we have already a program that is set out so that you would share with us where we can also publicize that, ensure that those who are supposed to attend those meetings and all those guidelines also we can give them information. I think that is what I have. Thank you, Honorable.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry I've come in late, and I want to thank you for calling this meeting, which is very valuable. I want to thank the Ministry for the report. Of course, as usual, I see the report is not there. It is for the Minister of Education, and we were disputed that the First Lady, who is not here as usual, and we are going to move out of this committee for the 5 years we have been here. Always Sewong and some others complaining about the First Lady. And then MUYINGO will always continue saying Mama is not here. However, I want to first find out, Mr. Chairman, through you, what was the input of Ministry of Education in determining the date of reopening these schools, however case, because the day is a Thursday, 15th Thursday. So what is your input, Dr. MUYINGO and the members who have come in? Now, I will spend some time to ask a number of questions out of this deliberation. On page 3, honorable members, there are things we don't have to just agree with as they come in. These people are saying on top that they developed a continuity of the learning framework with the 3 complementary modes. And these modes are situated there: delivery of live and recorded radio and television lesson broadcast by exemplary teachers. I want to dispute that. The research we have, people who are presenting on radios are not sent by you. Maybe if they're on Radio Uganda, you can certify that. But I've raised the complaint, Mr. Chairman, on a number of radios. There is a station I will not mention. For the last 6 months, they are teaching about climate of Africa. I don't know which secondary school can teach students for 6 months about one topic. Then printing and distribution of home study materials. I have a kid in P1, I've never seen any study material, and in the constituency. And I remember, Mr. Chairman, I remember I tabled some learning materials on the floor of Parliament which were not matching with the standard of children, but they were giving 1 copy per parish to be shared amongst other children. Then online uploads of recorded lessons. I think, let us be clear on this. This is done by competent schools and private schools which have money. Kampala Parents, Green Hill, and those schools owned by people very big in the system, not children in rural areas. Because where you have parents who don't even have mobile smartphones, you have children on our members. It is your children pick phones from you, not they having. How have they been studying this? Now, update on promoting homeschooling through radio broadcast. It is not true. These people are here. We can use it as a sample study from the media houses here. We can find out from NTV, NBS, and radios here to tell us how much ministry has been paying to NTV to have radio programs on TV. This is very simple. We can do it as a random sample. Otherwise, we cannot just rear all this. Then, Mr. Chairman, at the bottom, however, with the continued closure,
can you be clear on that? What's not true?
it is not true that they have been giving, we implemented for the 4 weeks in May 2020 through radio and TV. It is not true. So you can carry out a random sample whether there is any of this that was sponsored to have education programs. That one we can find out. They are here. How much were they paid? We don't need to know.
These media houses, any of the individuals.
The fourth estate, I could be specific on that. And let us say this. We have spent 6 months without studying. Then you are telling us 4 weeks. Was that enough? Even if you did so, was that enough? Mr. Chairman, however, with the continued closure at the bottom,
On page 3, the Ministry of Education and Sports, through National Culture Movement Center, has developed study materials to cover the rest of the syllabus for each class. We are here. They have developed. Can we look at them, Mr. Minister? For we are not, this committee is not a theoretical committee. We want to be given examples. Show us those materials. On page 4, the learning framework and study materials have been successfully developed by NCDC for pre-primary, primary, lower and upper secondary. Mr. Chairman, they are not there. What is happening? People are selling materials on the streets. Just go to Queen's Way. These hawkers are selling. They have made their own materials. I don't know whether these people have taken interest in finding out what these people are doing. Now, they have given that P1, learners in P1 to P3 have not yet developed adequate capacity for self-study from printed materials. The printed materials are for P4 and to P6. But this is a contradiction. Up you are saying you have printed for pre-primary. Then you are saying they are not fit, you have given P3 to P4 to what? To P6. So what should we take, Mr. Chairman? This is the first lady giving us this, the minister. You are saying on top, the learning framework and study materials have been successfully developed by NCDC for pre-primary and primary, lower and upper school secondary. Then you are saying, given that in P1 to P3 have not yet developed adequate capacity, what should we take? They have not provided, they are only giving for P6 and P7, P4 to P6. So what should we take? Now, Mr. Chairman, the update on promoting homeschooling through radio broadcast. The procurement of the 9 million radios for all households with the learners is ongoing, and this will ensure that no child is left behind in homeschooling. 4 million radios will be imported, while 5 million radios will be assembled locally in Uganda. Now, did you have the money, Honorable Minister?
Yes, we have been assured.
Okay, you will answer, but still there is a contradiction, Mr. Chairman. It will come. They have talked about the same radios at the end. Now, a total of 522 audio and 390 video lessons for both primary and secondary schools have been recorded, and the editing work to make them ready for broadcasting is nearing completion. Who are doing this? Who are editing this? What are they editing? And where is it going to take place? Because where is it taking place? Is it in the ministry? Which radios? You know, this telling of lies is very interesting. Don't come here to make us happy. Some of us are professional teachers. On page 5, Mr. Chairman, they are saying update on preparations for reopening of education institutions. The Ministry of Health developed standard operating procedures to guide the operation of education institutions during COVID-19. Based on the SOPs, Ministry consulted exclusively with the key stakeholders and developed guidelines for the opening of schools. Now, Mr. Chairman, what is the input of the Ministry in this? You see, Ministry of Health developed its SOPs. We agree. Now, when you bring in education, as a matter of opening, there are things that must change. As a matter of fact, because their SOPs were moving as per the time of COVID. And indeed, the Honorable Minister, let me tell you this. Ugandans have abandoned this. You go and look for border borders. None of them is writing any record of those who they are carrying every day. Don't tell yourself lies in front of this committee and in front of our chairman. So, what is your input? The moment you are opening schools, you have taken about 3 weeks in the media how you are planning to open. You must show us what you have done with the Ministry of Health in relation to education. Mr. Chairman, a clear example is when you tell secondary schools that you want every class, this is on record, that every stream must have a bucket, is it called a tap for washing hands, and it must be a step on, not using hands open. That's an SOP you are developing as a means of education that you have directed secondary schools, which is quite expensive. On page 6, Mr. Chairman, brief overview of the strategy for the opening of education institutions. Now, what are the candidate classes? Which term are you opening, Mr. Chairman? Tell us. Yes, you are opening candidate classes. Which term are you opening them for? What term are they beginning? First term, second term. And when is it ending? Remember that it's beginning on Thursday. Minister of Education, Mr. Chairman, at the bottom, and sports shall distribute COVID-19 prevention and control messages to education institutions. Where are the samples? These are very simple things. You must have developed them. I can lend you my iPad here. You Google, internet, you give us some of those so that this committee can look at them. Now, when you go at the honorable members and the Honorable Badiri in particular, when you got to the bottom, you are talking about a distance of 5 kilometers for quick response. I don't know whether you have carried out research about schools in Kalungu, where I come from. My constituency, the longest journey is 35 kilometers. That's the road, Mr. Chairman, we have from the beginning of the district up to the end of the district. When you go to Koboko, when you go to Karamoja, you will find that an health center is 80 or 90 kilometers, 180 kilometers from a particular area. So when you tell us about 5 kilometers, is this research from educationists that they will look? Because you must tell us which are those health centers that are going to have COVID alert equipment and everything. Once a child is discovered with the COVID in the school, he's rushed there. Now, in Amudat, in where I went, we took us, Mr. Chairman, Honorable Lydia. I was there. I know the mountains we climbed, the secondary schools where I went. That distance lowering a patient, and you are telling us 5 kilometers. It's not clear. On page 7, Chairman, they are talking ministry through capitation grant. Mr. Chairman, grants and GPE grant shall provide the following basic facilities. Capitation grant for UPE was taken back at Ministry of Finance under your instructions. The records I have, a school like Buganda Road got 6.7 million. It was taken back instead of 11 million. There is a primary school, Chiswa, got 2.3 million. That money was taken back. In Kalungu, most of the UPE schools, money was taken back. Now, which capitation grant are you talking about? And how are they getting back at this money? Because that's the money they should use for operation, Mr. Chairman. But it was taken back to finance. Then secondary schools, those who never took it back, they are providing accountability, meaning that money is no longer on their accounts. And let me say this, Mr. PS. Some of your UPE schools, their accounts have been closed in the banks. Why? Because they have taken 6 months without getting anything. Now, can you tell us, Mr. through the chair, which money are you talking about when it was taken back? To ensure readiness for safe reopening of education institutions, the following operations are being undertaken. Sensitization of district education officers, it is not there. Unless you are beginning tomorrow after the chairman has directed. Release capitation grant, you took it back. Distribution of 2 standard face masks, it is a farce and it is tall order. It is not there. You will not give them. Let me tell you that. Mr. Chairman, on page 8, challenges of declaring dead year. Now, can the minister tell us the difference? Because in their explanation here, they are saying, honorable members, some people have argued what? Ministry of Education is supposed to declare dead year. Doing that would have been the easy way out. However, there are major problems associated with the dead year. Now, can we know what's the difference between the 6 months we have spent not teaching and the remaining 3 months to close the year? What's the difference? That will solve problems. Because you are saying prolonging the closure of education institutions and sports facilities will cause deterioration and loss of key education infrastructures. But members of Parliament, Mr. Chairman, raised this matter on the floor. When I was Shaben Samba from his area, he told us that schools were developing ant hills. These people refused to give them money to slash schools. Already the schools are dilapidated. They are dilapidating and they are not there for that. So you are giving a kid here, this is not something we can afford when we are investing so much in improving school infrastructure. That's a lie. UP schools are condemned buildings. Mr. Chairman, I'm concluding. When you are giving a UP child 7,000 shillings per year per kid, and you are saying you are investing, they don't tell lies to the people who are seeing. You are not giving a lot of money to schools. Mr. Chairman, the president, according to the statement here,
it should also be proposing the way forward.
Yes, I'm giving a way forward. But yeah, I'm giving. I went in court asking them to increase money. How many teachers, Mr. Chairman is here, many teachers and other workers in private education institutions have gone for months without a clear source of livelihood. If this continues, it is likely to lead to higher teacher attrition, or they will try to find alternative.
Remember, you are reading to us what was presented.
Give
a comment
okay.
And refer to the paragraph.
I'm quoting verbatim. Mr. Chairman, the president in his...
Because you came late, I don't want you to take this opportunity to read it through the paper.
Okay, but that was verbatim. Let me conclude. Let me give this, Mr. Chairman. What the president said, he stated that he is going to direct Ministry of Education to construct 3,000 new schools that will cater for private schools which will fail. Now, what is happening, Mr. Chairman? I was with you recently at this hotel of Haji Chigongo. Remember, someone said 150 girls in Iganga were impregnated. And I asked them, are they 1,500 or they are 150,000? And the Ministry of Gender confirmed that they were 150,000. So the issue of
that confirmation was not made. I don't want to call me.
That's what they said. So I think we should find out. This one is not true. Then, Mr. Chairman, I think we should not agree with what is being said at the bottom, that this results in very good congested candidate classes and unmanageable numbers of students. So I think no, I have read the Honorable Minister and I comprehend. I'm not a nursery kid. So I am concluding, and the Honorable Minister, I'm touched. By the way, you are an educationist. You have schools. When I'm talking about this, I'm challenging you. So don't allow me to talk freely, because I know what is going to happen.
I am still the chairperson of this meeting. So, Honorable Minister cannot deny you the freedom to talk.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
But also conclude.
What they are saying, Mr. Chairman, where you are refusing to speak, what is taking place here at number 8 at the bottom, because you have refused to talk, some private schools owners, what is happening, what they are stating here is at the interest of primary school owners at the cost of poor kids in rural areas. It cannot be. It cannot. Finally, I want to conclude by financial implication. Has Parliament passed these radios? Have you got the money? You are saying yes. Who will buy the batteries for these radios and the cells as you use them? Because you are hiding so much in the radios. And lastly, you have talked about newspapers. You see, there is a lot of contradiction, Mr. Chairman. They are contradicting themselves. Yeah, I'm giving the last one. They had some 10 questions, but you allow me later to ask them. But what I'm asking here, at the bottom, Mr. Chairman, these people are contradicting themselves. They are talking about the new vision printout, how they tear out, how they cannot be what, but they gave them out long ago, and they spent over, I think, 9 billion. When they gave out these papers, we challenged in the Parliament. These papers were given. Now you are coming out to tell us how the new vision papers can tear out very easily. They do what, but you gave them out, and that's the only thing you gave out to schools, to children in sub parishes by 1 copy each child. So, Mr. Chairman, I beg to end there because I've talked for so long. Otherwise, I had some issues that are coming from secondary schools. If I'm given room, I will talk there. Then, but thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chair. First of all,
Mr. Chairman,
through your leadership,
we should appreciate that since these children were released from school to come and join their families, I think there is no reported sick child. So we should really appreciate. Meaning that by the time the children came home from school, they were not sick. Apart from the other 11 who had gone to America for a music concert and they were tested positive. Now, the point I'm driving at is that it therefore calls for government to understand that if these children are kept very well with all the guidelines in a school, they would come back healthy for holidays. But the challenge we are seeing now is total destruction of the generation of this age, of these people who are supposed to be having normal studies throughout this year, which is very dangerous to the community. We are going to have a certain group of people, citizens, who are with their own thinking. So to me, I would do, like in this issue for readiness for opening, they have emphasized about washing, but washing goes with sanitizers. The sanitizers are not emphasized. Washing alone is not enough. There must be drums of sanitizers, because what I know is that with our experience with these children at home, children are more careful than even some of us who are grown-up people when it comes to a communication about COVID-19. You see a child coming to you and jumps away. No, COVID. So I would like government and the minister to look at such serious issues. Then there is
part of the soaps.
I meant to say this the sanitizers.
Enhancing this, because sanitizers are part of the sanitation is part of the soaps.
Yes.
Yeah.
Then the question is on radios. You know, in Uganda we have often got a lot of challenges in this trade. They bring a radio which can operate for 3 weeks. It fails. That from China, from where? So let us really ensure that these radios can run for a longer period. Not bringing what they call duplicate
An issue of quality assurance.
Yes. Don't bring these radios that the market calls duplicate. Bring real radios which can manage which can take a good time to learn. Then I
should bring what we are saying.
Quality, good quality.
We have lived owning radio for years without a single repair.
Yes. Now, that's the issue we are very much emphasizing. Quality radio should come. Then now, we would like also to observe, Chair, this opening. Is it for the third term? Or since children have been at home, especially for these candidate classes, is the period of exams going to be extended?
I think that one was raised.
Yeah.
They asked which term.
Yes.
About,
so,
and also when is the assessment.
So thank you, Chair.
Honorable Mwatekamo.
Thank you, Chair, for giving me this opportunity, and I salute the minister and the technocrats. Mr. Chair, allow me to appreciate what they've done, and I go ahead and pose some questions. Mr. Chairpersons, when they've been updating us about homeschooling through radio broadcasts, but they are trying to concentrate only on primary and, if anything, secondary. Can they tell us which TV station or radio stations that the institutions like the nursing schools have benefited from since COVID started.
Technical.
And even technical, the UBTEB. Can they tell us where are our learners benefiting from that information, such that what they've said, that the continuing students, those who are not candidates, will be even promoted through assessing them on what they've learned from these ongoing broadcasts. So which parameter are they going to use, and which radio stations can we tune on to find out that we can benefit? Mr.
Honorable Minister, from what Honorable Mbwa is saying, you also observed that this presentation has, apart from just mentioning educational institutions, has very little to do with the tertiary and university.
Exactly.
Even when you talk of reopening, the whole presentation focuses more on primary and secondary. So what happens to tertiary and university finals? And then you are talking of schools opening as either full day or fully boarding. What about the students in tertiary and university who are who live outside the institutions, living out learners? You have not said anything, and yet you are opening the institutions and the universities for them also to resume. So I just wanted to take advantage of what Honorable Mbwa said, and also put in my observation from the presentation.
Mr. Chairman, building on your observation, I don't want them to hide that maybe universities, some other tertiary institutions like universities, they do their own exams. But we have tertiary institutions that do national exams under one umbrella, which means they should be studying the same, they should be moving at the same page. Like nurses, they sit for UNIMEP exams, like the technical, they sit for UBTEB. So we want to know where are they falling and where have they been learning for all these months to make sure that we are moving at the same page. And which kind of material did they print for them and we accessed as people who are having people's learners and at the same time proprietors. Mr. Chairperson,
and representative.
Yes, and representative. Mr. Chairperson, we can even okay, then I can proceed. Okay, they've said that either the number 6 schools when they are opening.
What number 6?
Number 6. Number 6 brief page number 6 overview of the strategy for reopening. All schools opening, they mentioned about they should either be day or day schools now, or boarding. So now my question will be similarly related to what Chair has asked. I have teachers who are commuting, both they stay outside, others they stay inside the school. So if we are talking about only learners, what will happen to teachers? Are you also going to incarcerate them inside the school? Are you going to say that if it's like that, all teachers, you can either also stay outside? Are they not going to be a problem that they can easily transmit the disease? Then in line with that, students who are the scholars, in case one student has got COVID-19, may God forbid, how are we going to trace the contacts? Because when the child leaves the school, from the school to her or his home, they are interacting and you don't know what happens. So, who is liable? Who is going to go supervising that child from child to school, then from to home, then from home to go and fetch water, then to gather firewood, such that you're going to know about all the contacts in case of anything. Then, again, you mentioned on page 7 that in case we open, we are going only to concentrate to minimize co-curricular activities And here is a question. As the trained teachers, if you're teaching a child, you're teaching a child as a whole. We must apply all the psychomotor skills. So if you talk about minimizing co-curricular activities, as educationists, are we training this child as a whole, or we are compromising? Because I know even before opening up any school, you're compelled to have playgrounds, show the games, what. So now, what is the essence of those things? Are our children going to benefit?
But Honorable, you also know that we are dealing with a unique situation.
But unique, it must...
Certain situations that it calls for certain...
That we must compromise. Okay, now I take it, Chair. Okay, then on number 8, now page 8, there is why you mentioned... Yeah, Mr. Chairman. Oh my God. Okay. Mr. Chairman, number 8, page 8, they mentioned how some people were consulted and they realized that maybe they gave their view that declaring a dead year, blah, blah. But now my concern is, who are those people that were consulted minus MPs? Maybe they've ever appeared on your committee and you recommended that the schools should go on. Because you might have consulted the proprietors and whatnot, but who are these people that were consulted that actually went ahead to agree that our children should be used as conduits or testers? Because I can see that our children are going to be used as testers, such that when they get COVID and say, you go back. Then, Mr. Chairman, as I conclude, in case COVID erupts in a school, yes, what are we going to do to parents who would have paid school fees? Are we going to refund? Are we going to say over and over again? So, Mr. Chairman, I thank you, but they should be able to answer this pregnant point, Mr. Chairman. The registration money for examination bodies.
It was asked already.
Okay, if it was asked, then, Mr. Chairman, President mentioned that the schools that are not ready, maybe they're financially incapacitated, they can liaise with Minister of Finance, make sure they can see. So my question is, which package, we need to get the package from this ministry. Which package? Because if you say the question was a bit, the statement was hanging, all the schools were affected, the teachers were affected. So can the ministry tell us the real package they have for private schools to make sure that before we reopen, we have planned this package? Because some of the costs were not involved previously. If you say we are not maybe going to increase school fees, and of which even if you increase parents, they don't have it, they've not been working. So which package do you have for private schools, as you've mentioned for the government? I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable. I just remember more time to raise to help me schedule what I would raise. But I will quickly raise a few of them, and some are really additions or emphasis on what has been said. Of course,
I expect that the minister and his team will be in position to respond to all this, and whatever else cannot be responded to now should clearly be consulted on, and the committee should be informed. We have talked of radios, and members have emphasized on the issue of availability of money, which the minister says is there. Assurance for finance has been made. But the question is still, which someone raised, if we have been unable to give these masks,
which these tailors are making they are supposed to make within a very short period. How sure are we that before we hit December, when the calendar year ends, we shall have assembled the 5,000 radios? Because Mr. PS, I know you have not yet issued any LOPO to anybody to provide the radios. You are still in the process. So if a mask has taken from I think around April to date, how easy is it to procure or to deliver these radios, whose procurement process is still ongoing? Because issuing an LOPO is one thing, shipping them is another thing, distributing them is another, because we even failed to distribute the materials. We were just dropping at RDC's offices, and the children could not easily get. Then we are talking of live and recorded radio, TV messages. For who? What percentage of learners are we referring to? Because in my home village, the children are busy playing and in their own world. So how do we leaving out a very significant percentage of learners in this approach? Yes, the messages could be good, but are we reaching out to the people who are supposed to get these messages? My children in my house, much as they don't concentrate on the learning, may pick one or two, but those ones at home in my village are completely in a different world. School and education is no longer an issue in their minds, because even the language and the approach is unique to them. So how are you ensuring that actually the children of this country all benefit and not a few? And when you look at this presentation again is more on the government aided schools. You really see that you are looking at Uganda as though all schools are government aided. The mention of private schools is like all private schools are at that level where it's just about to touching the button to reopen schools, and they will reopen. A number of these schools are struggling. Honorable Minister, I know you are better informed here than I do. Schools are struggling. People are selling schools, and yet the schools have finalists. How are we assuring Ugandans that my son, daughter, nephew, whatever in Center High is able to continue and complete the senior 4, senior 6, despite the challenges experienced by Center High as an institution? You know, we may talk about the president having said this, but the president has mentioned that, and he has mentioned many other things that have not been even touched. Even not even a single meeting has ever been called to look into what the president said. So we are talking of 15th, which is Thursday, which is next month. How sure are we that these schools will be available for the learners? And if there are challenges, what are we doing as a ministry? And not leaving them to the mercy of Ministry of Finance to determine. Because after this, I want to tell you, we are going to have a challenge of absorption of learners due to closure of most schools. Some of these community schools we are talking about, they are not there in some places. And where they are, they're actually private schools. So, Honorable Minister, that is a big issue. And then, of course, when you mention workers being paid when they are not working, none of them chose to be at home. They are very willing to work, but the situation which has caused that. Of course, that's why you find that those in private schools last earned either in March or April. But I would be very interested in a clear program or a clear proposal by the ministry on reopening of schools. Honorable colleagues, Honorable Minister, yes, the President is a chief executive, but I don't want to think the President is knowledgeable about each and everything.
And for him, he thinks 15
So I would expect that as the President is preparing to deliver a speech on reopening of schools, the Minister of Education should have guided very clearly. And when you say that there are challenges or negative repercussions associated with a dead year, then I want to believe that you are not the ones running your sector. Because I would have expected a strategy for trying to compensate. We have had cases where schools have started for half a year and children are moved to the next class. Some of us who have lived in war areas, you miss part of senior one, and then they take you 6 months to complete the senior one bit, or 4 months, and the next part of the calendar year, you are in another class. And we are here chairing this committee, by the way. Chairing. So I would have expected the minister to be having a clear, negotiable strategy of making sure that these learners at the end of the level, if it is the primary, if it is the O level, A level, are still put back to that point where they would be if there were no COVID. But it's like we have left the sector to the mercy of pronouncements by the President in his speeches. If he doesn't say, if he doesn't schedule an address to the nation, for us we are not saying anything. And that's why you see on social media people are posting anything about it is a official communication from the ministry. Then it takes days before the ministry denounces the posts. So you can see that some people are now trying to keep you awake, but it's like we have surrendered. If the President has not said anything, we are not advising the President as the technical part of the Ministry of Education, which I really think it should be something addressed. And then there is this issue of pressure to promote learners. It is related to what I've already said. Yes, I would want my child to complete a class. But if I'm pushing you to promote, why don't you have a mechanism of making sure that the child is progressed and compensated and pushed to a level where he or she is supposed to be? This is possible. This is possible if there is deliberate effort towards it. Yes. And then of course we are saying we are going to inspect these schools, and I would love that the same yardstick we use for private schools should be used for government aided schools, because we have seen cases where you seem to think a government aided school is naturally or automatically allowed to have any standards or any minimum standards. And then we harden more on private schools where we do not even invest anything. So let's be fair to all and assess all of them, but also find a mechanism to support them. So this is what I wanted to add on to the issues raised by the colleagues. But I want to thank the Honourable Minister and his team for the presentation and the attempts to inform this committee on the measures towards opening for finalist classes. Thank you, Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, Chair and my dear colleagues. First of all, for the concerns raised, and we are going to respond. I'll be asking my PS and his technical team to start the responses. But before I call upon the PS, allow me to make these two things clear. First of all, I want members to appreciate that COVID-19 is still here, it is with us. I want us to appreciate that. Two, I want us to appreciate that we are working in an abnormal situation. We are not in a normal situation. We would have all wanted to see things moving on normally. This is an abnormal situation. The lives of our children, our teachers and parents are very, very important that they are kept alive, they are safe. That's why we are, because of this abnormal situation we are operating in, this is why we are sometimes would want to do things the normal way. But the situation dictates otherwise. I want you to also to appreciate that since the lockdown, we've done a lot of consultations. We have consulted and talked to almost everybody. I'm surprised to hear some of the statements that have been made in this house today, because the consultation has involved almost everybody, including some of you, my colleagues. We've consulted. But with those comments, gentle people, I want us to know that we are operating in a very abnormal situation, trying to save the lives of Ugandans, trying to save the lives of our children and the teachers. I wish we had all the resources. Chair, just those two I wanted you to appreciate that COVID is still with us. Two, we have consulted.
Honorable Minister, the members appreciate that.
You are in an abnormal...
And that's how they are raising concerns. They are raising concerns in that perspective of the fact that COVID is with us and the situation is abnormal.
May I, Chair, ask my PS to respond, and then
We are going to interject. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I want to begin by saying what my Honourable Minister has stated. One, we're operating under an abnormal situation. Secondly, we have come to agree that COVID, there is no deadline for COVID now. So we can't say that we wait for the end of the year because we have 3 months to go, and therefore January will be a normal, we'll get back to normal and operate normally. So there is no deadline for COVID. As you have heard some people saying, it may be with us for quite some time. And therefore, we have to work to see how do we operate within the available, the existing environment. Secondly, or thirdly, is the means of education and sports that drafts or determines the academic calendar in this country. So, Mr. Chairman, as you have already hinted, we shall do a calendar, or we have come up with a calendar which we are finalizing, that will make sure that the learners do learn what they were supposed to learn, and therefore be able to progress with those skills or competences.
Those skill issues are clear. We come here and agree and sign. So,
can we expect that visit next week?
We shall communicate.
At least not next week. Or this week?
At least not next week. Not next week. We shall communicate. But at least we are. So first of all, I'm impressed with the speed. We have very committed members here. I know we shall get this out of our way. So maybe as we wind up, does this settle the issue of
of the possible suing of government, because according to what I hear underground, there was an intention to sue government over this. If we get this at this pace resolved, do you think, in your opinion, now that your lawyer is even here, this may help us avert the possible suing of government, or you're still going forward with your...
Chairman, by the way, it's not one way. It's not only one way. Even us, you can sue.
Of course. Of course. But let me listen to them, because for us, we know our side.
Honorable Chair, the spirit of that communication was a worry about the delay and also the silence about the progress of the project. After the signing of the addendum and in respect of the contract, which stipulated 20 working days, we expected to resume operations. Unfortunately, from the month of April, we are in September, and on the last day of it, there has not been any communication to SGS on what is next. We were worried for fear of us also being sued by government, because we thought probably the breach could be visited on our side. We are very ready to have a negotiation on the progress. This investment has been here since 2017 when operations stopped. We have been maintaining all the staff except those who have voluntarily resigned to take up other jobs. And many of them have resigned because they are not sure of the future of the project. But we have been paying our staff, we have been servicing the equipment on site, we have been doing every bit of our responsibility that is meant to be done by our side, without knowing on what is next on the side of government. The only option we are left with is to sue government, because there has been a breach on all fours. If this committee, as seems to be the spirit, is willing to have the project continue, we do not have any worries against government. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. John Taylor. As we wind up this meeting, for the benefit of our Honorable Commissioner, Honorable Francis Mujuche, the man who has just been talking is Mr. John Taylor. He's an NRM flag bearer who has just defeated the Honorable Chizige. Is that so? Honorable Chizige.
Kamuri.
Of Kamuri.
Yeah, so that would be under AOB.
We are winding up. These are closing remarks.
Not on the microphone.
Closing remarks.
Mr. Chairman.
Of course.
Mr. Chairman.
Still, I'm going to close unless you want to say.
I think that's just for emphasis. Because if we are to go back, then it should be one report. I'm still insisting that they make a communication on one-to-one on the issues that were raised in the minority. The other one is to provide evidence that they are still maintaining the staff, because that is a good gesture to the Ugandans that you are really committed to being here. That's why you have maintained the Ugandans still working, and they have been working paid and all, despite all this lockdown, despite not working. We wanted that evidence, and then so with that, then of course our things shall clarify in the list. If we could have that, then I would be able to look at this report and see, no, it's okay. We are all going to pay our signatures. Just like the chairman said, we want this project to work yesterday, but we want it to work right. I think the biggest achievement of this discussion, and where I want to appreciate them, is on our recommendation. No, when we took our recommendation where we said on the minority that the price should be reduced by 70%. I have seen in the adjustment at 80%.
Yeah.
And I think if we went in that spirit, then we would have been able to move together as well. So the way you answered that part of it
was quite convincing.
Good. If you did the responses to the others in that, there would be no problem. Yeah. So that's the type of response we love for those specific ones.
Thank you very much, Honorable, and thank you, Chair. I assure you that by Wednesday you will have that reply point by point. We do it very, very quickly and then we issue it. Thank you very much.
Honorable members, tomorrow we have a meeting with KCCA. I don't know whether still to be this room, clerk. Yeah, we are going to be here with the minister in charge of KCCA and her team on the Kampala flyover construction. Therefore, this meeting is adjourned to tomorrow 10 o'clock.
But also, Chair, outside this, we remember the matter which was in the paper. I think we need to big interest in it. How some people have parceled the UTL land in Colorado. There's this company called M&R, and some are now busy returning. I raised the matter in the floor. In fact, the speaker that time said, no, I think the minister should come, but also the committee must pick interest in it. Some people have decided just to locate, but some have panicked are returning the the UTL land in Colorado.
You're good to go. The rest of the discussion is ours.
Okay. Thank you very much.
No handshake.
Thank you very much.
And since we are going to meet again, we can come on site and ask.
Is that all?
Yeah. I said they selectively picked 2.9 to answer. I would want them to put in writing the concerns raised in the minority report part.
Do they have it?
No, they should not now. Not now.
Have them, I mean, for example, the compensation fees, you have them in majority report and in the minority report.
So
we answered only once.
No,
there are other concerns.
We are concerned, you have only answered those in the majority report. Then from the minority report, because it's not one item, it's only one. And they are not, if they were the same, then there would be no need for minority report, there would be only one issue. They are different. So,
it's okay, you go and prepare a response of what you've just been explaining here. Because you gave all the answers. In my opinion, I had them.
The issues in the minority
you need to write something so that it becomes an attachment to our report as we report back to Parliament.
Signed, like the issue you are denying of Amanyule, you put in writing. You put in writing. The office is.
And this is the truth.
You go and dig out information. There should be record. Your office was there, you just took over from somebody. So we just need to know. We need this to be clear so that we simplify work for you one by one. For your information, this committee is in total support of mandatory vehicle inspection. We just want to streamline things. Just streamline. Otherwise, we are in total support of mandatory vehicle inspection. We even passed a law which was processed by this committee, the Traffic and Road Safety Act amendment that you've just alluded to. So you can see we have goodwill. But we want things to be done the right way. That is all. We should not expect future.
Another minority.
Exactly. So if we can do that, we get these things resolved in the shortest possible time, then we can get moving. Probably our report will be ready very soon, but we are going to be constrained by the recess that was announced by the Right Honorable Speaker. We may have to go for a recess after tomorrow. Tomorrow is Thursday, and we come back. Yeah? We may, that's what I'm saying. If we don't, then we shall proceed very quickly, report back to Parliament. But you need to have given us that information prior to our conclusion. So if the recess is approved, then it will happen after the recess. The recess may run up to 27th of October, but for us, we shall be working. So otherwise,
yeah, we can meet them after regulation.
But we always can work with it.
we are going to discuss that internally.
But maybe later,
Availability of members,
what the
very
Attorney General
important.
report today, depending on what the Attorney General report today, because there may be a possibility of extension of the commission given you see, amendments on the pending issue. What we discussed. So we shall be able to, after this.
We shall communicate that after our internal discussion. Otherwise, thank you so much for responding to our invitation in the affirmative. You seem to want to make some closing remarks.
No, just a small question.
Please do.
When can we expect that report you were talking about?
The draft is here. The draft is here. But there were some few things that came up as we were beginning to discuss the draft. That's why we invited you, and that's why we have to come to your station to seek clarification on those pending issues. Otherwise, we are almost there. So those few issues are clear. We come here and agree and sign. So
can we expect that visit next week?
we shall communicate.
At least not next
Or
week.
this week?
At least not next week. Not next week.
We can communicate. But at least we are the first of all, I'm impressed with the speed. We have very committed members here. I know we shall get this out of our way. So maybe as we wind up, does this settle the issue of the possible suing of government? Because according to what I hear underground, there was an intention to sue government over this. If we get this at this pace resolved, do you think, in your opinion, now that your lawyer is even here, this may help us avert the possible suing of government, or you're still going forward with your...
Chairman, by the way, it's not one way. It's not only one way. Even us, you can sue.
Of course. Of course. But let me listen to them, because for us, we know our side.
Honorable Chair, the spirit of that communication was a worry about the delay and also the silence about the progress of the project. After the signing of the addendum and in respect of the contract, which stipulated 20 working days, we expected to resume operations. Unfortunately, from the month of April, we are in September, and on the last day of it, there has not been any communication to SGS on what is next. We were worried for fear of us also being sued by government, because we thought probably the breach could be visited on our side. We are very ready to have a negotiation on the progress. This investment has been here since 2017 when operations stopped. We have been maintaining all the staff except those who have voluntarily resigned to take up other jobs. And many of them have resigned because they are not sure of the future of the project. But we have been paying our staff, we have been servicing the equipment on site, we have been doing every bit of our responsibility that is meant to be done by our side, without knowing on what is next on the side of government. The only option we are left with is to sue government, because there has been a breach on all fours. If this committee, as seems to be the spirit, is willing to have the project continue, we do not have any worries against government. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. John Taylor. As we wind up this meeting, for the benefit of our Honorable Commissioner, Honorable Francis Mujuche, the man who has just been talking is Mr. John Taylor. He's an NRM flag bearer who has just defeated the honored